You are listening to the Bat Flip Podcast, a baseball podcast from Belly Up Sports and the Belly Up Podcast Network. Here are your hosts, Damian and Matt.
All right, welcome in everybody to the Bat Flip Podcast. This is episode is this 11, Damian?
12.
12. Oh my gosh, we've been at this for a while now.
Yeah.
I hope everyone had a great week. We sure did, and especially Damian with his team winning the World Series. So today we're going to talk about that World Series and give a little rundown on the season as a whole and a review. And we're excited to get into it. How's everything been going this week, Damian?
It's been going pretty fantastic. I mean, if you're asking me, my team just came fresh off winning a World Series for the first time in 32 years. So I can finally stop hearing about 1988 and finally have a World Series in my lifetime.
Yeah, I hear you. That's awesome. Congrats to you and all the Dodgers fans out there. They definitely had a great season. So
Yeah.
yeah, let's get into our review of this World Series. And the series was won by the Dodgers 4-2. It was, I believe, that was both of our predictions were that the Dodgers would win it in 6 games.
Yes, it
So
was.
we're a couple smart guys here, it seems like. But
I don't think too many people would be saying that.
yeah, I don't know, but you start to look at some of our other predictions about the series, and you might change your mind on that. So
Yeah, definitely when we go when we hit onto these awards, what we are pretty much sure what they're going to be. Don't go back and listen to what our awards predictions were from earlier on in the year, because then you will not be calling us smart at all.
you might call me smart, but
I don't know.
we'll see. So
Well, let's go. Let's just jump into this World Series. Kind of just hit on the games pretty quickly. Kind of story of Game One was kind of Tyler Glasnow really struggled with command. Kershaw was excellent. 6 innings. Had 8 strikeouts, 1 walk, 1 run. And the really fun fact about that is that Mookie Betts became the first person to ever steal the tacos twice. So they do a thing in the World Series where the first person to steal a base, America will get to steal a free taco from Taco Bell on a certain date, which actually happened to be yesterday. But Mookie Betts is the first person to ever do that twice.
yeah, that's awesome. I I saw on Twitter yesterday someone that had gone to like 8 different Taco Bells and
Yep.
stolen a taco, so that was pretty interesting. But yeah, so Mookie Betts in that game was spectacular. 2 for 4, hit a home run, also had a walk and 2 stolen bases. Coming into this series, Mookie Betts was my pick for the series MVP, so I was looking good after Game 1 on that. And like Damian said, Tyler Glasnow was just not great. This was a matchup that I was worried about for the Rays because Tyler Glasnow is a hard thrower whose command can get away from him a little bit sometimes, and that's what the Dodgers feast on is hard throwers whose command can get away from them. And you've seen it all year. They've been one of the best fastball hitting teams in baseball, and they take their walks and they don't swing at a lot of pitches out of the zone. And that's exactly what Tyler Glasnow, the opposite of Tyler Glasnow, needs to face. And this was a bad matchup for the Rays. And Kershaw, I mean, putting some of those demons to rest about the postseason and had a great game. So
Yeah,
that was,
it just kind of hitting on the Glasnow struggle in command. In 4 1/3 innings, he threw 112 pitches for 58 strikes, and ended up giving up 6 walks. Um, that is a
yeah.
massive number.
He had twice as many runs allowed as he had hits allowed, just to put
Yeah,
that in perspective. So,
yeah.
I mean, it's 6 runs and 3 hits. I mean, you cannot in a big postseason environment like this, you cannot walk guys that much. I mean, if you walk one or two, especially in a situational, where you may have a base open or something, not the end of the world, but walking 6 guys is just never gonna work against a team as good as the Dodgers. So the Dodgers won Game 1 8-3, had a 1-0 series lead. So let's talk about Game 2 a little bit with the Rays evening it up at 1-1.
Yeah, Blake Snell was pretty fantastic in this game. I mean, he did get pulled in the 5th inning after 4 2/3, but he had a no hitter going into that inning. Gave up a 2-run home run to Chris Taylor. But he had, 4 walks, 9 strikeouts, 88 pitches. Kind of been the story with Snell is that they've really pulled him before he's got too much damage against him or too deep into games. Seager also hit a homer in this game to go along with that Taylor one. The big player of this game really was Brandon Lau. He hit 2 home runs. to really give the Rays the boost that the Rays ended up pulling this game off 6-4.
Yeah, and Snell with those 4 2/3 innings, that's going to become a theme later on in this series. We'll see as we continue to talk about it with getting pulled fairly early. But this wasn't super early. He had walked some guys. The last batter he faced was Chris Taylor when he hit that home run. So it wasn't. This wasn't that surprising. Snell's not hadn't been a guy that's pitched super deep into games. A lot of that by choice by Kevin Cash because Snell, coming off an injury last year where he missed part of the season and just not the best guy going through the lineup a third time right now. So but yeah, and another thing to talk about was the Gonsolin and May struggling in this game. That's a theme for the entire postseason. Really, the Dodgers rookie pitchers that were counted on to put up have a big postseason and really put them in that position struggled. And also, you mentioned Brandon Lau. Man, Brandon Lau had a horrible postseason coming into this series, and 2 homers in Game 2. I mean, getting him going was really the Rays' only chance in this series, and that really helped them.
Yeah, they needed him, especially he was their big guy during the regular season. And then when he really struggled in the postseason, it really hurt them. Outside of the breakout from Randy Rosarena, who we'll hit on his overall series in a little bit because he played a big impact on this series for the Tampa Bay Rays.
Yes, for sure.
Um, but let's go ahead and jump over to Game 3. This game was pretty much just decided by Walker Bueller, who kind of started it off quick and just never let the Rays get into any sort of a groove.
Yeah, Walker Bueller was just so good. 6 innings pitched, 3 hits allowed, 1 run, 1 walk, 10 strikeouts. Really, and with that kind of line, giving up 1 run is pretty unlucky. I mean, he was outstanding. We saw this as the postseason went on. He started to get a little bit better, a little bit better, probably related to his blister improving. And
Mhm.
this was his best start of the postseason by far. I mean, he was very, very good.
I also found it fascinating that in one of his interviews, he really said that he's a rhythm pitcher, so that he really struggles at starting and getting started in a year, and that he kind of is like an F1 engine, or a jet engine that once it really struggles to get going, but once it's going, he's it is really good, and he had said that he was just kind of starting to get in that jet engine, fired up and was really starting to hit his groove right as this playoffs was starting. So
Yeah, for sure. And you see sometimes guys that are like that struggle early and come on later on. But yeah, I mean Walker Bueller was fantastic. Mookie Betts had a pretty good game with 2 for 5 with 2 stolen bases. He stole 4 bases through the first 3 games, which is pretty big, especially against a Rays catching core that is pretty good. Zunino is a very good defensive catcher, so stealing 4 bases in 3 games is pretty impressive for Betts. And then Charlie Morton, didn't have his best start of the season in game 3.
no, he struggled with command, but he didn't walk people. Um, he only went 4 1/3 innings, gave up 7 hits, 5 earned runs, 6 strikeouts with 1 walk. He was getting into a lot of 3-ball counts, and he's also a guy who knows how to, when he's in those 3-ball counts, to not walk people and do that. So he was putting it in the zone, and the Dodgers were just able to hit it, and that's evident by the 7 hits. And he's a guy who never really gets hit around all that often. And to give up 5 runs for Charlie Morton, just that's very unusual. He's a guy who limits damage, and he wasn't able to do that in this game.
Yeah, especially as a postseason pitcher, he's been one of the best. So after game 3, the series had been, I mean, it had been an entertaining series for sure, but it had been fairly uneventful, kind of what you'd expect. Game 4 is when things got wild in this series. Uh,
Yeah.
and I mean, game 4 was just crazy.
Yeah, this is probably the second best game I've ever seen of baseball outside of that Game 5 that the Dodgers and Astros had in the World Series in 2017. But this, I mean, it started off with the Dodgers getting on the board in the first, taking an extra run into the third. The Rays were able to pull one back in the fourth, and then when the fifth innings, just when all heck broke loose, the Dodgers scored one in the fifth, Rays scored one, Dodgers score one in the sixth, the Rays score three. Dodgers score two in the seventh, the Rays score one. Dodgers score one in the eighth, shut out the Rays in the ninth or in the eighth, and you're like, okay, well here we go. and then in the bottom of the ninth, the Rays scored two and walk it off.
Yeah, this was a just a insane game, and the big blow that really put the Rays into this game because I think it was 4-2 when this happened, and a 4-2 game. Dodgers have a good bullpen. The Rays are kind of dead in the water a little bit, and Brandon Lau, who we talked about coming alive a little bit in Game 2, comes up and hits an opposite field 3-run homer off of Pedro Baez to put the Rays in front. Of course, the Dodgers, with as good as their bats are, they didn't go away. They came back with a Jock Peterson hit, but um, Kiermaier hit a home run, and then the ninth inning is where it got crazy. Though the Dodgers brought on Kenley Jansen with a 7-6 lead, and it didn't go very well for Kenley Jansen. He had a bad luck hit to start the inning, and a little bloop hit to right field that just barely got by Kike Hernandez, who made a crazy diving attempt at it. And then they got to 2 outs, and the Rays magic kind of happened. Rosarina had one of the best at bats of the postseason, drawing it was like a 10 pitch walk or something. And then Brett Phillips, the unlikeliest of heroes, as they would say, came up, and the guy who had two was either two or three at bats in the entire postseason before this, comes up and hits a line drive through the shift, and you know then all hell broke loose. Chris Taylor, who was playing center field, booted the ball, then tried to gather it back up. Of course, the tying run was on second, so the tying run scored pretty easily. I believe it was Kiermaier. And then Rosarena came around and tripped coming around third base and fell face planted, face down on the ground. And the relay throw comes in from Muncy, and it just gets by Will Smith. I think Will Smith was trying to quickly catch it and do a swipe tag because he didn't know Rosarena had stumbled. But the ball gets by him, and Rosarena comes home and scores to give the Rays a huge win in game 4.
Yeah, that whole play really came down to Cody Bellinger not being able to play center field. He was actually limited to DH duties in Game 4 because of he woke up with back tightness the morning of Game 4, and it was supposed to be a really cold night in Texas. And LA was afraid that of Bellinger going out there and being stiff and not being able to move enough while playing the field that when he'd come in it would affect his bat and they might have to pull him. So they just decided to DH him to where he could, while the defensive outs were happening, he could go down and maybe be in the cage swinging and just staying warm by doing stretching or whatever. But that really came down because you've seen through the rest of the series, Bellinger was one of the best defensive center fielders that the game has, getting fantastic jumps on plays. And Chris Taylor booted the ball to begin with, and then he made a relay throw to Muncy, which was off the plane from home plate. And what Will Smith, kind of went over, didn't think the ball was going to get cut off, was out of position, and then he was trying to rush back, and Muncy didn't think he was rushing back, and like you said, tried to make a quick swipe tag. It was just a really bad play from a team that you don't really know that plays. They play very sound defensive baseball, and that was just a really bad defensive play.
Yeah, and it's part of that, a little bit of Chris Taylor, who has played a lot of center field before. You know, but he had played it a lot lately. He's rushing that play. He's trying to get the ball up. He's trying to quickly throw it in and maybe have a play at the plate or have a play to third to end the inning. And you know that happens all the time. He pulls his glove up, comes up too quick on it. To That's a very common mistake for an outfielder. Arozarena with one of the most aggressive sins of the postseason, because that play probably shouldn't have scored a run. If it was in any other situation, they probably would have held Arozarena at third. But wanting to try to walk it off here was was part of it. Of course, the relay throw was a little bit off, but I mean, I think Will Smith is just, there's not much he can do because he doesn't know that a Rosarena fell down. I mean, he
Right.
just doesn't know it, and he's trying to quickly do it because he knows it's going to be a close play. He's trying to quickly catch it and tag. And I mean, I don't blame any individual player on the Dodgers for that.
No.
Most of that's just game pressure. It's the World Series, man. It's the World
Yeah.
Series, and you know this is all happening quickly, and guys make mistakes. It's not like any of those mistakes were real uncommon mistakes either.
Right.
So,
Yeah. So that was probably one of the funnest games we've seen. And the Rays were able to walk it off, like we said, took the 8-7 victory, and that really made it. That was a what tied it at 2. It was
Tied it
2-2
at
at
2.
one
It was
point.
2-2 going to Game 5 on
Um,
Sunday.
and Game 5, it was Glasnow versus Kershaw again, and it was just another thing of Glasnow struggling with command.
Yep.
In 5 innings, he threw 102 pitches. He didn't walk as many, only walked 3 this time, but he gave up 2 home runs and just, out of 102 pitches, he threw 61 strikes.
Yeah, you just with that kind of efficiency and against the team like the Dodgers, I mean, they're not going to swing and miss outside the zone very often. I mean, you have to locate. And Glass now at this stage in his career has nasty stuff, and he's an elite pitcher against some teams, a different type of team. But the way the Dodgers hitters are, this just a bad matchup for him at this stage. So,
Yeah.
Glass now had a really rough series, and that was I kind of expected that going in, that they were going to have to Glass now is either going to have to pitch differently from what he usually does, or the Rays were going to have to win in spite of him.
Yeah, and another part of this game, which is we'll talk about this being a theme through this World Series outside of Game 4, at least for the Dodgers, is that in this game the Dodgers bullpen had 3 1/3 shutout innings, um, and yeah, outside of leaving Baez in for Game 4, against Lau coming out for a second inning, the Dodgers bullpen was really really good. If we jump to Game 6, they had 7 1/3 scoreless innings. So just in those 2 games, it was what 10 2/3 scoreless
Yeah,
innings.
it's crazy. It had a
And
lot.
that's a lot. So Dave Roberts, who's been criticized a lot for his bullpen management and not being able to just make the right decisions in the pressure time, he pushed all the right buttons in this series.
Yeah, he did a good job. And one other interesting bullpen nugget for Game 5 was that, and I know you mentioned before the show that we were discussing it, and that Kenley Jansen didn't get the save opportunity because he gave up the 2 runs in Game 4 that ended the game. And but you said before our talk here that that he actually had pitched 2 days in a row, so they might have been staying away from him just to avoid, overusing him. But Blake Trinan got that save opportunity, so I thought that was very interesting that Jansen didn't get that save opportunity, because even though there would have been 3 days in a row, in my belief is that if he's your best guy and he's your closer, it's the World Series. You got an off day the next day. I mean, if you're super confident in him, you go to him there. I mean, if you think he's your best pitcher in your bullpen and your closer, so I was surprised that happened. But for the Dodgers, that obviously worked out to bring China in because he looked really good.
Yeah. And then talking about a bullpen decisions, let's go ahead and jump to Game 6 and Blake Snell.
Yeah,
Uh, he was absolutely dominant in this game.
he
Five
looked
and a third
so
innings,
good.
uh, 2 hits, 1 earned run, and 9 strikeouts. But really, that 1 hit and 1 earned run, I mean, he had 1 hit through 5 innings, really. Um, and no, it was actually 1 hit through 5 1/3. He gave up a single to Barnes,
And then
and then they at 73 pitches in this game, they pulled Blake Snell.
Yeah, that was very, very bizarre to me, because Blake Snell he was on his game. He looked like it was a career outing that he was having, and 73 pitches. I know the whole thing about the going through the lineup a third time right now is a big deal, and especially against the Dodgers, who are a good team. They see a lot of pitches from guys, but Blake Snell is I mean, you cannot pull your best pitcher, who Blake Snell is the Rays' best pitcher. You cannot pull him that early in this game. But on the other hand, if you look at this game, the Rays only scored 1 run. So
Mm-hmm.
I highly doubt that Blake Snell would have pitched a complete game shutout in this game. So at the end of the day, it probably didn't matter. I mean, the Dodgers scored 3 runs after that. Betts hit a homer off the bullpen later on. He had the big game with two for four with a homer, 2 runs scored. But I mean, I think if you're the Rays, I mean, that pulling Blake Snell was tough. I just didn't get that, and
Yeah, and
especially when your bullpen has struggled, especially a couple of your higher leverage guys that you were going to point out in a minute. So
yeah. I mean, and as soon as they pulled him out, the next batter was Mookie, who, they were getting ready to face the top lineup, like you were saying. And between Mookie, Seager, Justin Turner, and Max Muncy, they were a combined 0 for 8 and 7 strikeouts. Muncy was the only one who had a ground out, I believe, earlier in the game. So
Yeah.
it's not like Blake Snell was getting hit by those guys. I mean, he was dominating them. And as soon as they bring it out, Mookie hits the double. Um, and then they get a wild pitch that scores Austin Barnes and brings Mookie to third. And then that sets up one of the most insane base running plays that I've not plays, but just man, I the jump that Mookie Betts gets and scores on a ground ball to first base against a pulled in infield. I mean, that was I've watched Mookie all year long, and that blew me away. Like that play is something that you don't see 99% of the league make.
Yeah, Mookie's. I mean, he's a great base runner and he's a great player. So he's gonna do stuff like that that really blows you away. And of course, at the end of the day, a bullpen for the Rays that struggled. Betts coming alive in that game. I mean, it was a great a great series and great win for the Dodgers there in Game 6 to close it out.
Yeah. And just a little fun fact about the Dodgers in this series. So uh, they're 2 out RBIs in this series. They scored a total of 32 runs in these 6 games. 18 of them were scored with 2 outs. That is 56% of their runs in this World Series were scored with 2 outs.
Yeah, that's an impressive number. I mean, 2 outs is when you really have to. That really shows that your team, your hitters are all locking down and really focusing, and not trying to do too much. So that was a big stat this series because the Rays, I believe, struggled with 2 outs runners in scoring position, that kind of thing. So
Yeah, and like Matt was saying a little bit earlier, just hitting on some of the Rays, like we said coming in, they had a fantastic bullpen, and that their pitching was their strength, and that they were going to have to win with that pitching being very very good. And three of their high leverage relievers really weren't. Nick Anderson, who had been their closer for most of the year, he had a 9 ERA in this World Series, which was it equivalent out to 3 innings pitched, 5 hits, 3 earned runs. Their big lefty Aaron Loop had a 7.71 ERA, which was 2 1/3 innings. He gave up 2 runs. And Pete Fairbanks in 4 innings, he gave up 6 hits and 3 earned runs. Those are three big
yeah,
guys that really, really, really cost the Rays this series.
yeah, you just can't if your bullpen arms struggle like that. That's just not going to work out. And that's one thing that you kind of saw throughout the postseason is that even with, especially in some of the earlier series where they were having no off days, they of course had off days in this World Series, but you throw out guys that it's almost like that whole seeing a pitcher a third time thing. You throw out bullpen arms, and this team has seen them. At least every player's probably seen them at the point that you're throwing a guy for the fourth or fifth time. So I mean, you get down to the end of it, and this was especially true in the Braves Dodgers series, but in this one too. I mean, they were seeing the ball well off of some of these relievers later on, and the relievers, of course, getting worn down a little bit, and the fact that the Dodgers were a bad matchup for this bullpen. Everyone talked all year about how the Rays had a stable of guys that could throw 100 miles an hour. That was the quote from Kevin Cash. And you talk about the fact that the Dodgers hit fastballs extremely well and they don't strike out on pitches out of the zone. So that's a bad matchup when you're throwing all fastballs and you're throwing a lot of pitches out of the zone to try to get chases too. So it was a bad matchup at the end of the day for that bullpen from the get go. And just a good job by the Dodgers in the series. I mean, they were the best team in baseball, and you had to, they buckled down and played through all the pressure and were able to get it done.
Yeah. We wanted to before on our last episode we gave our World Series picks, which we both picked the Dodgers in 6. But we also tried to guess who the MVP would be. And you picked Mookie Betts and I picked Justin Turner. Well, the MVP actually ended up being Corey Seager. He carried it on over from the NLCS and was amazing again in this series, batting 400 with a 5.56 on base, 700 slug, two home runs, 5 RBIs, 6 walks, and 20 at bats. I mean, 8 hits, 7 runs. I mean, he just did it all in this series.
Yeah, Corey Seager was great. I had picked Mookie Betts, and He had a good series, 270 average, 321 or 269 average, 321 on base, 577 slugging. He had those 4 stolen bases in the first 3 games, which was pretty nice. That really is and he had that great base running. Play that you talked about in Game 6. A couple homers, hit a home run in Game 6. Betts had a good series. I mean, he wasn't just out. He was outstanding for sure. I mean, if anytime you have somebody with a 900 OPS and everything, that's outstanding. But he wasn't quite like MVP, World Series MVP level. But he was really really good. And then Justin Turner, your pick, had a good series too.
Yeah, he had 2 home runs, 2 RBIs. Batted 320 with a 346 on base. Had 4 doubles, which has kind of been the story for Justin Turner this year. Um, so another good series for him. But I know there's a certain Rays player that you want to hit on and not forget the postseason he had, but let alone the World Series he had.
Oh yeah, you cannot talk about this postseason, even though the Dodgers were the team that won, without talking about Randy Arozarena. I mean, this guy, rookie, comes into the postseason and he hit what 10 home runs in the postseason. I mean, it's like just throw your notes away. There's no way that this guy wasn't anything less than spectacular. Hit in this series specifically, went 8 for 22 with 3 homers. The Dodgers gave him a little bit of the Barry Bonds treatment, walking him a lot. Randy Arozarena, throughout his minor league career and throughout this season, wasn't a guy that walked all that much. But this series, a 462 on base percentage. Obviously, he hit the 3 home runs, big home runs too. A lot of them were early in games, kind of set the tone. This guy, he reminds me, and I don't know about you, he reminds me of a very young Marcelo Zuna. Arozarena is still a guy who can play the field pretty well, and he's got that speed still. But all he does is hit the ball and hit the ball hard. That's
You
his
know,
main thing. His plate discipline's not terrible. It's not like an elite plate discipline, but he hits the ball and he hits the ball hard and he does it to all fields. It's a little
you,
bit, to me, it's a little bit similar to Marcelo Zuna when he was with the Marlins.
you know who he really reminds me of?
Mhm.
He really reminds me of Andrew McCutchen, a young Andrew McCutchen without the
Really?
hit.
Wow. Okay.
I don't know if he'll ever get to the MVP level, but he just seems a lot like Andrew McCutchen. I mean, plays the field really well still. Like you said, hits the ball to all fields. He has the speed too. I mean, he looks a lot like prime Andrew McCutchen to me.
Wow, that's a couple of good comparisons there. Like, if Randy Arozarena ends up like anything like either one of those guys, that's going to be a fantastic result for a guy that a lot of people were down on the Rays for trading for Randy Arozarena because they gave up a top prospect for him in Matthew Liberatore.
Yeah.
So that was surprising. And Randy Arozarena, up until I think he might have made a couple prospect top 100 lists overall in MLB, but he wasn't like it's not like he was a top 10 prospect or something. So very interesting that he was able to do this in the postseason, and I look forward to seeing him play. He's a really entertaining player to watch because, like I say, just hits the ball hard. Um, a couple other talking points from this series that I wanted to mention: the Rays. The Rays 216 average as a team. I mean, you're not going to be able to win this to win the World Series with a 216 average as a team. And the fact that it went 6 games with that being the case was impressive. But I mean, that's very very low. Um, it is what it is. So
Yeah. Well, that's pretty much the World Series wrap up that we had. We kind of want to just, as a little ode to the season, go through just some award kind of prediction, kind of, but just what we are kind of feeling and what our award winners would be like. Um, so for Manager of the Year, we actually agree on both the NL and the AL. Going with Don Mattingly, the Miami Marlins manager in the National League, and Kevin Cash, the Tampa Bay Rays manager in the American League.
yeah, in the National League, Don Mattingly was he had a great season managing. I mean, the Marlins making the playoffs this year, even though it was the expanded playoffs and shortened season. The fact that they were even after, if you had told me after 60 games before the actual season was supposed to start back in March. If you had told me after 60 games that the Marlins would have been in second place with a winning record, I would have told you were crazy. And the fact that they were able to stick that with that and get to that level after having so many players out early in the season because of the COVID outbreak they had, you have to get a lot of credit to Don Mattingly. His team played hard for him. They did a fantastic job this year. Um, they just the young pitching started to come together. Mattingly did a great job managing them, building them up, giving them making the right moves to build their confidence. Um, and this team was very good. So good for Don Mattingly.
Yeah, and Kevin Cash, I mean, as much as gripe as he gets for his pitching decisions in the World Series, as much as you may say, that Rays team to have the best record in the American League. Teams thought it would be the Yankees or the Indians or the Astros maybe. That this man went out with a payroll that is very very low and made that team the best team in the American League, and that is truly amazing. So Kevin Cash, I don't care what they're saying bad about you. You are the American League Manager of the Year.
Yeah, and if you're Kevin Cash on that same note, I mean, he pulled the right button, pushed the right buttons all year. He made one mistake in Game 6 of the World Series that's going to get magnified because it was a mistake. And it might not have even been a mistake. You never know. Snell might have faced the top of the order again and given up 5 runs. You just never know if that was a mistake or not. And I'm sure Kevin Cash is sitting at home kicking himself for it right now for pulling Snell early. But, I mean, he did a great job this year. Like you said, the lowest payroll in baseball. And I mean, I thought the Rays, just they seemed to me like they were always being put in the right positions to succeed, and they played the game in a way that fit them really well. So, good job by Kevin Cash and Manager of the Year.
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and jump to our Rookie of the Year. And we both agree in the American League with Kyle Lewis, the Seattle Mariners center fielder. Who do you have for your National League, though?
For my National League, I have Jake Cronenworth. Going ahead and talking about our American League guy, Kyle Lewis. It was a close race for most of the season between Kyle Lewis and Luis Robert, but Luis Robert really kind of fell off close to the end of the year, went through a struggle. He's a guy that's going to struggle at times with his high strikeout rate. He's going to go through phases where he's struggling. Now, Luis Robert, at the same time, is going to be a fantastic player in the big leagues. I mean, he's already really, really good, and I mean, I don't see a way that he's not. But Kyle Lewis had a 262 average, 364 on base, 437 slugging, hit 11 home runs this year. Was able to play an adequate center field. I mean, almost 2 wins above replacement, was very good. So my NL Rookie of the Year is Jake Cronenworth from San Diego. He had a great season. Played 54 games. He's honestly kind of a throw in a deal with the Rays. So imagine if the Rays had kept Jake Cronenworth, what might have been for them. But obviously with them having so many middle infielders, it was a thing where Cronenworth was kind of a luxury to have, but had a great plate discipline numbers for him. 9% walk rate, 16% strikeout rate. Those are very very good numbers. 285, 354, 477 slugging percentage. He only hit 4 home runs in 192 plate appearances, but he still had a 477 slugging percentage. So he obviously hit a lot of doubles, hit the ball hard. 1.4 wins above replacement. He was very good this year.
Yeah, and if I believe you picked him earlier in the year
I
as
picked
your
him as
national.
in mid-season I picked him. So
Yeah, I picked earlier in the season. I picked Dodgers pitcher Dustin May. Well, for my Rookie of the Year, I'm gonna pick a Dodgers pitcher, but it is not gonna be Dustin May. It is gonna be Tony Gonsolin. We talked about his struggles in the postseason, but in the regular season, he was fantastic. He started 8 games, 46 2/3 innings, strikeout rate of almost 9, ground ball rate of 34%, 231 ERA with a 229 FIP. Um, he was, during the regular season, he was looked at as the 3 behind Kershaw and Buehler. And when Buehler was out, they were relying on him to be the number 2 guy. And he really stepped up this year and and had a lot of fantastic games during the regular season. So he could be a guy that gets a look for National League Rookie of the Year. Just another guy we want to shout out to is Devin Williams, Brewers relief pitcher. Relievers hardly ever get votes for Rookie of the Year or Cy Young or anything, but this guy had a fantastic season. I think he gave up 1 run in 27 innings. Had like an insane, almost 18% strikeouts per nine. He just there's nothing more you can say about this guy than he was the best relief pitcher in baseball this year.
Yeah, look at some of his peripherals, and I know that, you know, even at 1.09 xFIP, which is one of the ERA predictors, basically says that he was just by far the best reliever in baseball this year, and that's pretty crazy. So, that's one of the lowest numbers I've ever seen after a guy who pitched 27 innings. So, Devin Williams was good, and also shout out to Ian Anderson, the Braves pitcher, and Sixto Sanchez. Both of those guys came in and solidified rotations that and did really well. Where those are two teams that really needed it in their rotation, and that Braves would not have made the NLCS without Ian Anderson, and the Marlins wouldn't have made the playoffs without Sixto Sanchez. So while those guys are a little bit behind the others when it comes to Rookie of the Year for various reasons, those are two guys that I wanted to shout out as well.
Yeah. Well, go ahead and jump over to Cy Young.
Yes. So I know that. I mean, the AL Cy Young is just we both know who it's going to be, and who we both picked the same guy. Everyone picks the same guy. It's Shane Bieber. I mean, what else can you say about him? I mean, the guy was just absolutely incredible this year. Um, you know, 14 strikeouts per nine, 2.4 walks per nine. Um, I mean, he honestly got a little bit unlucky on his home run balls too, on his fly balls. 15% home run per fly ball rate is a little bit high. But my gosh, I mean, a 163 ERA, and he pitched 77 innings, led the AL in pitching wins above replacement by a long way. In fact, Zach Greinke was number 2 in the AL in pitching WAR at 2.1, and Shane Bieber had a 3.2. He was over a full win better than the number 2 guy in the AL. That's just incredible. That's just incredible.
Yeah, that is pretty amazing for Shane Bieber.
So, but our NL, I know we have a little bit of a disagreement on. So I'll let you go first with the NL.
Yeah, for the National League Cy Young, I am going to go with Trevor Bauer. I He had such a fantastic season, 73 innings in 11 games started, a 12.33 strikeout per nine, 2.1 walks per nine, a 215 batting average on balls in play. Left 90%, almost 91% of guys that got on base, he left them on base. A 12% home run fly ball rate. He had a 173 ERA with a 288 FIP. I mean, Trevor Bauer, we saw glimpses of this, especially back, I want to say it was 2017.
2018, I think, when he had a really good season and kind of got
28,
banged up
yeah.
at the end of it.
It was 2018. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think he broke his shin, didn't he? Like,
He had an injury late in the season. I don't remember what it
yeah,
was, but
it was something like 3/4 of the way of the season. He was the hands down American League Cy Young, and he got injured, and wasn't able to get the amount of starts that he needed. But he at that point we all thought he would be a Cy Young, and he's shown that again this year that he's just as good as we thought he was after struggling last year. But Trevor Bauer, to me, I mean, he's going to be a free agent this year, so free agent year really, jacked his stock up, and it's going to be pretty fascinating to see. We'll hit on him in future episodes, but for sure he's my Cy Young pick.
yeah, and you can't go wrong with Trevor Bauer. I went ahead and picked Jacob DeGrom because I think Jacob DeGrom, with you look at some of his peripheral stats and his combining that with his ERA, was incredible, and he doesn't get quite as much attention because of playing for the Mets, and the Mets missing the playoffs again. But 13.7 strikeouts per nine as a starter. Um, Very close to the number that Shane Bieber, the insane number that Shane Bieber put up with the strikeouts per nine. Obviously limiting walks. He got a little bit unlucky at times with balls in play. Had a 2.38 ERA, which isn't quite as good as Trevor Bauer's, but it's still very good. And 2.6 wins above replacement. To me, Jacob DeGrom is. I mean, if I wanted a guy that went out there tomorrow to put on the mound, it would be Jacob DeGrom. And this is a case where these stats are so close with these three that, I mean, especially in a shortened season, I really liked Jacob DeGrom. The third three being Yu Darvish, who was incredible this year as well. I really liked what Jacob DeGrom did for the Mets, and on a team that wasn't that great, being able to put up the numbers he did was, just very good. So I pick him again. I mean, he's won two in a row. I would have given him the third in a row. So
Alrighty, well, we'll jump over to our MVP. We have a little bit of a disagreement in our MVP for the AL. The NL, it's hands down, it's Freddie Freeman. We had a little bit of a debate before the show about Freddie Freeman to Mookie Betts. Um, that the conversation should be a lot closer than what the vote is gonna be. But Freeman is the MVP. He hands down this year, and I'll let you go ahead and talk about him because I know you were able to see what he did day in and day out.
yeah, when you talk about the Freeman versus Betts versus Tatis was still kind of their thing. Tatis didn't have a great September, so he kind of fell down just a little bit. But the Freeman versus Betts thing is, I think Betts was close to Freeman this year, but I think it wasn't. I think it was. It's going to be a situation where everyone is going to kind of debate those two a little bit. All the voters and everything are going to debate the two a little bit, but almost all of them are going to decide on Freeman because they are close enough to where it's a debate. But Freeman's obviously the correct pick out of that debate. Freddie Freeman, just his plate discipline numbers took yet another step forward, and they were already good. I mean, he only struck out 14% of the time this year, which for a guy who is typically more of an 18 to 19% strikeout rate, a 5% dip is huge. Started walking a lot more. He hit 341 this year with a 462 on base. I mean, he was almost getting on base one out of two times, a 640 slugging percentage. He had a Mike Trout esque 187 WRC plus. Hit the ball very hard. In fact, I think he was, maybe number three on the out of all the top 30 or so players on average exit velocity. Um, 3.4 wins above replacement. He obviously his defensive metrics, because he's a first baseman, are going to be just a little bit lower. But as a first baseman, he was elite. He had a 15 UZR per 150, which is in the elite category, one of the defensive metrics, and he was also a pretty good base runner for a first baseman. He's a big guy. You wouldn't typically think of Freddie Freeman being a great base runner, but I mean, he was about average as a base runner this year, which was pretty impressive. So I thought Freddie Freeman just had a monster year. 53 RBIs in 60 games too, and RBIs aren't a stat that's talked about quite as much anymore. He played all 60 games and 53 RBIs in 60 games. I mean, that's a pace for almost 200. That's just insane.
Yeah, he was very very good this year. Yeah, and he should absolutely be the NL MVP. So who do you have in the American League?
In the American League, I have Jose Ramirez. I think it's a close race between him and maybe even his teammate Shane Bieber. But I think that you look at Jose Ramirez's numbers, and I mean, he went off in September and brought his season line to a just crazy number. 17 home runs, which was, I believe, second in the maybe third in the American League. I think it was second in the American League behind Luke Voigt. Um, but he hit, his plate discipline numbers are very good. Um, he had a 292 average, a 386 on base percentage, and a 607 slugging percentage, which comes together to be a 163 WRC plus. This is a guy that got a little bit unlucky too on balls in play. He only had a 294 batting average on balls in play, which is a little bit below the league average, or maybe right at the league average. So for a guy who hits the ball pretty hard and everything, that's a little bit surprising to have that be his batting average on balls in play. But this is a guy that he does everything. He's a good base runner. He had 10 stolen bases, and his defense was very good at third base. So 3.4 wins above replacement, which equaled the major league high, and with Freddie Freeman. Jose Ramirez, Indians wouldn't have been there without him. He's a great player, and he deserves MVP this year.
You got the right team. but you have the
Yeah,
wrong player. I'm gonna go with Shane Bieber. It's not often that we see pitchers get MVP discussions. What was it, Verlander in 2011,
believe so.
uh,
Kershaw's.
Kershaw in
Yeah,
2014, and Shane Bieber just had that year. Um, you know, we talked about him earlier for the Cy Young, but 77 innings, 14% strikeout rate. I mean, like you said, you hit on every stat we could earlier. I mean, 163 ERA. This man was so underrated this year. Uh, he's going to get a bad rap for what happened in the postseason, but luckily that these awards are voted for before the postseason starts, so there's no recency bias about what happens, based on the entire season. But Shane Bieber, I mean, he absolutely was the best player in the American League this year. Any show you listen to, anything you watch baseball wise, was always talking about how Shane Bieber, Shane Bieber, Shane Bieber, and he was the best player, playing. And every time he started, you had to tune in. And I just think that in a year that is so weird, and that the offensive numbers, it's close to what Shane Bieber did. The historic numbers of what he put up on the pitching side should absolutely get him a nod for MVP.
yeah, and it's hard to argue with that. I mean, Shane Bieber was spectacular. A couple other kind of honorable mention guys. Anthony Rendon did really well in his first year with the Angels. Had a good season, 156 WRC plus, had a 286 average, had a 418 on base percentage, drew a lot of walks. Jose Abreu had a great year for the White Sox. He hit 19 home runs, which was second in the American League. I knew I was forgetting somebody. And so he had a fantastic season. Hit 317 this year. So that was a very good year for him. So those are guys who will probably get some votes come awards time. So
Well, that pretty much wraps up all of our awards predictions, and we've already done our World Series one. So,
yeah.
well, at the end of this episode, we kind of just wanted to give each other, a minute or two, just to kind of give us what your thoughts were on this weird and kind of awkward season that was the 2020 MLB season, and even what the playoffs were. So, I'll go ahead and let Matt start.
Yeah, I tweeted from our account the other day, the Batflip podcast at the Batflip podcast on Twitter, and I said just a shout out to Major League Baseball and the Major League Baseball Players Association for being able to put this together. There was a lot of doubt for a long time that we were even going to have a season this year, which it would have been bad. I mean, it would have sucked to not have a baseball season at all. But they were able to come to an agreement and figure out the protocols. And while there was some bumpiness with the COVID situations and the Marlins and the Cardinals situation, and there were some weird moments with when it came to that, we had a successful season. I mean, we got to crown a champion, and congrats to the Dodgers. Congrats to all Damien, to you and all your fellow Dodgers fans. We had some great postseason moments. You had the big walk offs, and you had teams that weren't supposed to be there this year that got there and were able to win series, and it was fun. I think you look at the play around the league, it was about as good as you could have expected for a season where you had such a weird spring training and a weird uh, a weird lead up, and you didn't know. I mean, you had some guys who didn't know if they were going to be playing. You had some guys who had a really hard time being able to keep up with all their workouts and their off-season training after spring training at home and all the quarantines and lockdowns and everything. It was very difficult, but we got to see the best team won in the Dodgers. They were predicted to be the best team coming in. They were the best team all year. They had the best record, and they won the World Series. You got to see the good teams come up at the end. You got to see some cool moments, breakouts from the Padres, the White Sox, both had breakout years. The Rays making the World Series with the lowest payroll in baseball, their first appearance since 2008. Um, you had some of the moments that you think back on for this year with the Astros, and the fallout from their sign stealing scandal, where you had the fights and Joe Kelly and the Randy and the Ramon Laureano altercation with their hitting coach and all this stuff was interesting. and it was a weird season for sure. But I'm so glad we had it, and I'm so glad that we got a chance to to just watch some baseball and have, for a few months, baseball was able to take our minds off of, all the crazy things going on in the world with the election and the pandemic and, all the craziness. And and it helped, the two of us, obviously, we wouldn't have been able to start this podcast and do the show, which I know that we both really have enjoyed so far, doing this. And we wouldn't have been able to do this without baseball this year. So, I'm just glad we had a season in general, and had some really fun moments. So
Yeah, 2020 is definitely a year for baseball perspective that I will never forget for the obvious reason that the Dodgers were able to win the World Series. But like you said, it was just very, very awkward. It was a season that was so unpredictable. It was you just never knew what twist and turn was going to come, with all these COVID situations and the amount of just injuries, not outside of COVID, that happened in the American League, or not the American League, in the MLB this year. Um, it's this season, man. It is going to be a tale of the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. Um, I'm I really missed that there's no fans in the stands. The roar of the crowd that every time a ball goes up, that's just a regular fly out to center field that people thought was hit 500 feet. Um, the booing of the opposing team, you get the cheers for your guy, you getting chanted MVP, and just all the parts that come with the 50,000 fans or 40,000 fans or how many other fans that your team gets packed into a stadium. That's something about this season that I will never forget, and that I always took for granted in baseball, was that the fans do play a part in this game, uh, as much as you don't think that they do. The the energy swings that come from having fans and the players having to hype themselves up this year, it was really awkward. Shout out to all the how the broadcast teams made, the fan noises from the MLB video game, or how they put fake, Fox put fake people in the stands like it was a video game as well. It's a weird year that you will never forget for reasons like that. And and the way the MLB was able to put this together and bring us baseball and give us part of this healing process for the nation to have something sense of normalcy. And we'll get into it a little bit later, and I know people have different perspectives of it, but it came out today that or yesterday that the league lost over $3 billion this year putting this season together. And that might not seem like a lot when you think about millionaire owners and billionaire owners and stuff, but that is a massive, massive number that is going to have an effect on baseball for many years to come. Um, and for for that price to be paid to give us this sense of normalcy with baseball this year, I don't think it's something that should go unnoticed. Um, so I thank everybody for allowing this 2020 season to happen, and for all the protocols and everything that was put in place to allow this to happen. But let's not forget the amount of people that put their time and hard-earned money into this thing, that are really suffering some humongous losses this year.
yeah, for sure. It was an interesting season, and I hope we never have to do it again. I mean, that's kind of the way
Never.
to put it. At the end of the day, we ended up having a season. Um, we hope next year we get to come out and have full crowds, and it's possible that we don't have full crowds from day one. But this season, like you say, this is going to have a long term lasting effect, I believe, or maybe not long term, but for the next few years. um, and we're starting to see that already with free agency, which is a good segue into the end of our show, because next show will be on Sunday, and we will be talking free agency and this off season coming up, which is going to be a very interesting off season, but for a lot of different reasons. I mean, there's going to be a lot of surprises, I believe, this off season. We've already had some surprises, which we'll hold off on for now, but we're gonna get into that pretty big on Sunday.
Yeah, just a little bit of a teaser for you guys to make sure you guys tune in. But that, thank you guys for whatever you've given us so far. These 12 episodes, the amount of support we've had has gone way above anything that we could have ever expected. Um, you know, there's times where I look at the listens or the subscribers and think like, man, there's people who have way more than 12 episodes, maybe up into the hundreds of episodes, and don't have this support that we are able to get. And I do not take that for granted for one bit. Um, I, I can speak for myself, and I believe Matt wants to do this as well. We want to find a way to get you guys more involved in the show, whether that be surveys or question and answers during the off season, or finding some way to do free agency predictions with you guys where you can just put a team in and for a certain player. We want to find some way to get you guys more involved because that's just going to make this even funner and allow you guys to feel that you have a stake in this. We don't want to be a normal show that doesn't listen or doesn't want to bring the fans in. We want you guys to be just as big a part of this as we do. So thank you guys for the support so far, and make sure just to follow us on everything, and just help grow this thing because we're having a blast doing this. And this off season, it's going to be weird, but we're going to put our time and effort into helping this show be even better and grow.
Yes, we will be here all off season, every week. We'll have some different topics. We're hoping to get some guests coming up here soon, and so keep your eyes open for that, and keep following us, and we'll let you know when that time comes. Anytime we get a confirmation on something, we'll give you a heads up, and we're excited. We're gonna keep doing this off season. We're gonna do every week, and we've got some ideas for different things, and we're not just gonna talk about what's going on during this off season because sometimes it will be slow during the off season, but we've got all kinds of stuff we can talk about on the show, and just about just about baseball in general, and because we love the game and we love the game the way it is, and we think that it's going to be we can't wait to keep it going here. So we're with that being said, we will see y'all on Sunday for our free agency preview. And this has been the Bat Flip Podcast. I hope everyone has a great week.
Yep. See you guys.